Hello everyone and welcome to today's live webinar session on perspective of notified body on post-market surveillance. I am Shubhangi Sharma, working as a business development manager at Saraca Solutions Inc and your host for today's session. I extend a very warm and heartiest welcome to all the attendees from different time zones. It is indeed great to see that you all took time out of your busy schedules and are here with us for some important learning and discussions. So, before we begin, I would like to inform all the participants will be muted during the live webinar. Please drop your queries in Q&A box and our expert will answer your questions in the question and answer round at the end of the webinar. In case you have any additional queries later, you may email your questions to us. Our team will send the certificate of participation and recorded version of the session to all attendees of this live webinar. So now without further ado, let me introduce our lead presenter of the day, Avinash Kishore. Avinash has an extensive experience in developing strategies, plans, and reports per EU MDR for quality management system, post-market surveillance, and other technical documentation. He has helped various large medical device companies in developing and remediating their QMS and facing PMS audits. Welcome, Avinash. Our panelist for today is Girish Hirpara, a quality and regulatory expert with over 15 years of consulting experience with medical device and pharmaceutical companies. Welcome, Girish. Now, I would request our presenters to start with the session.
Thank you, Shubhangi. Thanks for the introduction. And thank you, audience, for joining this webinar. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. So, like we are receiving many kind of approaches from the various perspective of various peoples to reaching out. They are reaching out to us for various help in various aspects. So, due to that, we have think about it to conduct a webinar on the post-market surveillance. So let's begin with the agenda today. So today's agenda is introduction to post-market surveillance, how to approach post-market surveillance proactively and reactively, typical observations by notified bodies on post-market surveillance, a timeline for adverse event reporting, best practices for post-market surveillance, critical activities for post-market surveillance. So today's main agenda is like perspective of notified bodies on post-market surveillance. So before beginning with the perspective of notified bodies, I would like to let's discuss a bit about the post-market surveillance. So like here, what we can see here, the lots of medical devices. So what happens once the medical device is manufactured through the manufacturers and after placing it into the market? So what would manufacturers have to do to monitor the safety and performance of the medical devices throughout their lifetime? So that is post-market surveillance. So let's talk about a bit about the post-market surveillance. If we check definitions of post-market surveillance, so post-market surveillance is a set of activities which manufacturers have to conduct to gain the clinical data and experience of the medical device from the market. So basically, these activities are designed to generate informations regarding the use of the device, informations regarding any unexpected problems at the time of use of the device, or any kind of informations or like device behavior at the time of use of the device. So that kind of informations we can get through the post-market surveillance. So post-market surveillance should be directly proportional to the risk. So if the risk is high, then manufacturers have to do more scrutiny on the post-market surveillance. They have to conduct various sources to collect the data through the post-market surveillance. So there's a lots of information is depend on the risk of the medical device. If now we have defined like what is post-market surveillance, so let's talk about why post-market surveillance is utmost importance for the medical device manufacturers. So here, like we have mentioned few points, so we will go through the point one. So to identify risk and benefit that occur during the practical use of the device. So what is practical use? Spectral use is something when a manufacturer have placed the device into the market and the actual end users, that might be a user like end user patient, that might be a surgeons and healthcare professionals, when they are using their devices in real life, at the time of real life using, there can be an unexpected problem comes through, like can be raised by using these devices. So that is something which we can say during practical use. So at the time of the use, we can identify some risk or some problems which we can't identify at the time of the clinical testing or failure mode effective analysis. So point two, constantly update the benefit risk assessment and to improve the risk management document. So what is benefit risk assessment? If we talk about analysis, it's something when the manufacturers have to conduct to identify the risk and the benefit ratio. So if benefit outweighs risk, so that's fine. If risk outweighs benefit, then manufacturers have to conduct a study, or they have to update their document to minimize the risk up to the least level, like as far as possible, to to update their risk benefit ratio. So once benefit outweighs risk, then they can go to the various documentations and see certifications. Point three, identification, use error, and off-label use. So, like if the user error is something when a healthcare professionals and end users, when they are using the devices, and there might be chances to it can be a human error at the time of use of the device. So at the time of use of the device, if there is any human error, so that we can say like identify user error. And off-label use is something when the end user is using the device beyond their limit, beyond their intended purpose. In some circumstances, manufacturers or end users have to do the practical use of the device up to the beyond their limit. So that we can say the off-label use. So manufacturers can identify if the device have used beyond their limits. They can identify by off-label use. And point four, quickly initiate necessary measures such as Kappa recall, and this is definitely like once some manufacturer came to know a various problem related to the medical device, so they can came to a response. They can just came to a analysis, so they can make some actions like that can be a kappa, that can be field safety corrective actions. So on the basis of complaint and the root cause analysis, so manufacturers can take some certain major actions to finish that particular or to close that particular complaints, or to update their product quality as well. Meet applicable regulatory compliances. So manufacturers can meet regulatory compliances by identify problems and whatever the standard they have to follow, so they can just comply their document as per their need. And by the compliance of post market surveillance, they also can meet the regulatory compliances as well. So now we have understood like why post market surveillance is of most importance. So now let's talk about what can be the approaches, what can be the methods of post market surveillance. So basically there is a two methods of post market surveillance, that is proactive and reactive. What is proactive? Proactive is something when manufacturers can do the activities before adverse event is happening, so they can do these activities prior to coming any problem or any risk. So they can do the analysis which can come in the futures, and they can stop the event before happening it. Uh, in other hand, if we talk about the reactive data approaches, so in reactive approach is something where manufacturers have to do do the any kind of activities in response to any kind of complaint which is already arising. So that activities in response to some problem, so that is a reactive approach. So now we have talked about both the approaches. So let's talk about the databases. So what can be the databases of to collecting the proactive data, to collecting the reactive data. So let's talk about the databases. So on the left side, there is a proactive databases we have mentioned, and on the right side, there's a lots of databases. So on the basis of reactive data we have mentioned. So I am going through the point by point of each and every data sources. So point one, post clinical trials and including PMCF. So definitely, so manufacturers can do a post market surveillance study. So they can they can do various kind of studies to get the clinical data. So on the basis of devices, they can identify what kind of study they have to do. They have to do the clinical development plan. So various method they can follow. They can do the prospective study, they can do retrospective, many kind of study they can follow. Do. And point two, expert user group and focus group. So manufacturers can take a feedback from the individuals who are expert in the field of technology, who are expert in the field of particular medical devices, and who have experience on the particular interventions of the device related disease. So by their feedback, so manufacturers came to know the what is user need in the market. So at that point of view, manufacturers can take certain actions, and they can just create a device as per the user need. Customer surveys and user feedback. So definitely, customer surveys plays a vital role in the post-market surveillance. So manufacturers have to create some sorts of positions. So they have to circulate these positions to the end users, to the distributors, to the patients. So by their feedback and by their responses, so manufacturers can gather the data, and they by their feedback, so they can came to know if there is any problems facing with the customers, or it might be from the end users as well. So all the feedback they can get directly by the end users. Adverse event reporting. So adverse event reports is one of the key factor and important things. So every manufacturer, if there is any severe and mild and moderate adverse event is happen, so on the basis of risk level, manufacturers have to report these adverse event to the electronics databases such as FTA. So they have to upload that particular data on the databases within some time frame. So that is something which is adverse event reporting. So it's help us to meet the regulatory requirement as well. In-house testing. In-house testing is something which manufacturers have, any kind of end user, if using a device in their home, so such as blood sugar test. So manufacturer can directly take the feedback of the end users, like patients, to what kind of testing they have done in their homes. If any kind of issues they have, they can identify the problem of that as well. A trend analysis. So trend analysis is something which, if any kind of problem is coming again and again, so manufacturer have to focus about monitor of the problem, on this problem coming repeatedly once again, once again. So after the repetition number of times, so they have to take some certain actions, certain measures like gap buying, executive action. So why these problems is coming again and again, manufacturers have to take certain actions. So that is something trend analysis. So they can identify the problems of repetition of problems. Point seven, failure analysis. So failure analysis is something where we have to identify the potential cause of the failure. So we have to do the root cause analysis. We have to do the why analysis. By these of the process, we can identify actual problem of, related to any kind of complaint which manufacturer have. Media. If we talk about the media, there is a various social medias there, so Facebook, Twitter. So from these media we can find unpredictable data, if somebody is talking about the our devices, it might be in the chat and might be in the video. So manufacturers can conduct the data from these videos and chat as well. So that kind of data is also help us to update our device quality as well, and update if any kind of problem they are discussing in their videos, so we can find the fault in the device, then we can take some actions on that as well. Point nine of the proactive, that is market action. So market action is something which we have to take after identification of the problem. If we talk about fail safety notice, and it takes say CAPA, active and reactive action, FSCA, field safety corrective action. So these actions are we can identify once we can evaluate the post market surveillance data. If we talk about reactive data sources, so point one is customer complaint and warranty claim. So definitely if manufacturers receiving a customer complaint and also any kind of warranty claim, so that is a problem related to the device. Due to that they found the customer complaint, and due to that they found warranty claims as well. So by identification of particular complaints, and what can be the claim through the warranty, so that is also one of the source to get the post market clinical data. And proactive non-conformity is definitely if manufacturers have got any kind of non-conformance from the notified bodies, so in that response they can also gather the data. Compatibility with other devices. So that yeah, definitely manufacturers have to check if they any kind of instrument or medical device, if they are using in conjunction of any other devices. Suppose that any kind of instrument is using any kind of implant which is from other manufacturers, so definitely they have to do the compatibility test with the particular product. So that is something which manufacturer have to do. Device misuse is something a kind of optimal use, so they have to check like if like any end users or any patients is going the beyond the limit of the devices. So if they are doing any kind of testing also their intended purpose, or if they are using to cure any kind of disease which is not defined as per their intended purpose, then it can be a device misuse here. Unsolicited user feedback. So unsolicited user feedback is something like if any manufacturer, any person is talking about any devices, but if they manufacturer have not asked, but they are just doing a conversations with the customer cares or maybe in the any kind of chat box. So these type of feedback manufacturer directly pick by listening their conversations, by reading their chats. So this kind of data is not directly a complaint, but we can get to update the medical device and to update the quality of the product to identify the problems related to medical device in actual use. Continue market priority. Yeah, definitely. Like if we came to know like these are the problems with the device, so we can just see the scope of the medical device into the market. So there are like various potential causes which can be used to affect the market standard of the device as well. So we can minimize these particular problems and we can increase the product quality as well, and we can just wide the market as well. Point 7, vigilance. Vigilance is electronic databases on specific databases like MODE, MHRA, TG, Health Canada. So these are the various databases which manufacturers have to search in periodically basis to collect the data. There's a various kind of complaint is reporting in these databases specific to the medical devices or subject device. Or manufacturer can also do the study if they didn't have any complaint of subject devices, so they can just identify the problems related to similar devices. So on the basis of the problem related to similar devices, they can update their subject device as well. Maintenance and service reports, definitely like at the time of maintenance or service reports, they can check the particular reports and they can gather the data like if there is any kind of fault at the time of maintenance. So by these data they can take certain actions to identify the problem of device. Finally, point 9, that is the teacher's review. So the teacher's review is one of the sources which manufacturers have to do periodically. So they have to review the various literatures which has been by various experts. So in these literatures, they like various kind of activities which is doing in the actual life is mentioned. So in that particular problem, if there is any problem related to the device, they can identify any risk related to use particular devices. We can identify that. So after identify these particular risk related to devices, so we have to update our risk and document it in the like same perspective. So like now we have defined proactive and reactive data sources. So let's time of quiz. Here's a small quiz. There are just two questions which have some options, and we can take 30 seconds for each questions. If you just have to mark the answer in the chat box. So I am going through the questions one. What kind of post-market surveillance you are currently using? Like proactive, reactive, both proactive and reactive. And if you are not aware about it, you can mark it not sure in the chat box. So you just have a 30 seconds so you can mark your answers. Thank you all of you. Thanks for the comments. So as per my perspective, like both proactive and reactive approaches are good for conducting any kind of post-market surveillance, because like when we collect the posts, both the data like both proactive and reactive, so we have like both the activities, we can find the problem which cannot arise at the time of actual use, or which can be comes at the later stage, we can identify that particular problem by the proactive databases. So let's come to the second question, that is which approach do you follow for preparing PMS plan and report? Like individual report for individual product, consolidate report for a product line, or if you are not aware about it, you can just mark it not sure. You can write these answers in the chat box. Right. So in my opinion, like individual report for individual product is very good. Like when we talk about the product lines, if you have any kind of product which have a different indication for use for different devices. So for that kind of devices, to create a separate document, this is really good. So at the time of update, so you didn't have to update like the PMS for entire documentation. Like if you found any kind of component related to any kind of devices, so you just have to update the document with respect to the particular devices. So we have a like Greece, HIPAA Greece is our panelist, so we can take the what the solutions, what the perspective of Greece on these questions.
Thanks, Avinash. So, based on my expertise and what I faced till date within my experience, so both proactive and reactive data source are very important and very crucial, I can say. What we can gather as much as sufficient clinical evidence from the real world, and we can suffice the notified body expectations. So both data, proactive and reactive data set, are very important to collect the as much as sufficient information, either it's qualitative or quantitative aspects, because we need to provide sufficient data to demonstrate your device safety and performance throughout the device life cycle. Second question, individual report for individual product. That is also I am recommending, because in a legacy era or maybe in MDT era, many manufacturers consolidate one plan for all the device range and device family, and one report for in similar way. So that create lots of confusion to notify body. They create lots of question marks, which data for which device, and which is the complaint for which device. So there are lots of mash up over there always. So to avoid unnecessary confusion, lots of question from the notify body, if your device family and device different device available in your portfolio and their indication intended purpose, that's specification that are totally different, then I would recommend to go with individual report and individual brand for your each device. You can add variants, different size within the one plan and one report, which indication and intended purpose and specification are similar. So that's my recommendation always. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your suggestions. So now we have understood about the what is post-market surveillance, and why post-market surveillance is at most importance for the manufacturers, and what can be the data sources of post-market surveillance. So now let's move on to the main agenda of today's webinar, that is perspective of notified body and typical observations of notified bodies on various documentations. So I am again inviting Grish to take over from here to talk about the observations by various notified bodies.
Thank you. So as we can see over here, there are multiple notified bodies logo are there. So these all notified body, their review process, approach, and audit and feedback are in different way, but ultimately we need to follow the regulation that is by default. So now, as we understood from previous few slides, what is the PMS, why it is important, and what kind of data source we can collect and gather information to demonstrate your device safety and performance. But after gathering all this data, what would be the next step? Like what notified body will expect from those data? So that there are major three audit, I can say, from where notified body generally shout the queries, raise the concern, and non-compliance or non-conformities. So there are three major audit area. First one is your QMS audit, second one is your technical file or technical documentation audit, and third, it's vigilance audit. So I'll explain you in depth in next few slides. Can you move on? Yep. First one, observation by notified body during QMS audit. So first, let me tell you particular, if your PMS procedure, which is the main base about your PMS activities, in line with regulation requirement and which we need to follow in continuous manner. So if your PMS procedure is not well established, not in depth, then definitely you can get the non-compliance observation from the notified bodies. So robust procedure always required in line with MDR regulation. Second, non-compliance of reporting activities of incidents, adverse event. As per MDR, they are saying when any device-related side effect, adverse events, or any complication occurred, that we need to continuously assess, we need to evaluate, and we need to report in proper manner within the timeline and within the time duration as per regulatory requirements. So if we will not follow that procedure and steps, then there is a chance to get the observation. Third, inadequate PMCA plan. Why I mentioned this PMCA plan activities over here, because PMS is main roof about your all these activity, real world data collection activities. So PMCF is one method, or I can say one activity from where we can gather the as much as clinical data on your subject device. So if your PMCA plan as per the MDCG 2020-7 is not adequate, then there is a chance to get the observation. Fourth point, failure to identify root cause.
Sorry.
Yep. Failure to identify root cause or implement corrective and preventive action. So if we are aware, there are lots of complaints and non-conformity from past audit and from the feedback from notified body on interim review, and there are, so if we are aware there are certain open action item are pending, and if we are not taking any immediate kappa on that particular issue, then there is a chance again that notified body will raise question and measure or critical observation. Fifth point, lack of evidence related to competency of people making decision to report or not report about your side effect or adverse event or that kind of device related issue. As we know that in clinical evaluation, we need clinical expert opinion and their review and their approval. So similar way, when any adverse event, side effect, any complication occur related to your device, which is the major safety concern, which we need to continuously provide updated data to the notified body as well as competent authority. So that kind of events we cannot assess in a simple manner, because we need expert people opinion over that. And if we are not assess that adverse event, side effect with that expert opinion, whether these events or incidents as per the regulation requirement, or whether this impact on high level on patient health, then there is a chance to get the observation. So expert or competence people opinion always required when any high level or severe incidents occur. Lack of proactive PMS source. I would say not only proactive source, but both, as I recommended, both reactive and proactive data source most important to gather real world clinical evidence data to demonstrate your device safety and performance. So we need to perform PMS activity in well established manner. We need to gather from all the methods, sources, where we can get this data in qualitative and quantitative manners and sufficient, so that we can suffice device safety and performance requirement as well as expectation of notified body. So if we avoid such activities and we cannot provide adequate data, then there is a chance to get the observation. So these are the main 6 points related to QMS audit. Now related to technical file, what kind of observation during tech file, we can get the observation from the notified body. So I highlighted over measure points. First one is no device specific PMS plan or just a broad PMS procedure. So if we have multiple devices in our range and we are creating one consolidated plan for all the device range, and we are not creating proper plan for each device, then there is a chance to get the observation from the notifier, because there are lots of confusion and mesh up always over there, which data for which device. So that not traceability over there in that plan, or once that plan we gather, according to that plan we gather all the information and we consolidate in one single report. So there are always lots of confusion. So avoid unnecessary this kind of confusion. We need to create separate plan for each device family. Second, clinical evaluation report and risk management not updated with data from PMS. PMS activities always cross-linked with your internal technical documentation also. So PMS data is your real world evidence from where we can get the on label, open label or off label performance data as well as safety data. What we are claiming on label, that these are the potential adverse events, these are the performance criteria, this is the indication, intended purpose. But sometimes there is a chance we can get the off-label use or maybe high level other risk which we are not claiming on our device. So that information we need to continuously assess, we need to monitor, and we need to continuously update our internal documentation like risk management, clinical evaluation report, as well as also your IFU. Third point, no justification for no PMCF. So if based on your device risk classification, if your device is legacy device, well-established technology, then low risk. And if you are not going to plan and conduct any PMCF activity, you need to try to waive off certain this kind of PMCF activity, then adequate justification must be required in your technical documentation. If you are not placing this kind of justification, then notified body will raise the concern. But if you are planning to conduct PMCF activity, either healthcare survey or either through proper clinical study, this is generally required in high level implantable devices, high risk device. So that point of view, you need to define proper PMCF plan as per the MDCG 2020-7 guidance document. Fourth, failure to implement defined PMCF plan and procedure. Once we create certain document to start any activity and we are not following that particular document, and we are deviating that document, then there is a chance to always get the observation from notifier, because we are writing something and we are not following that document in proper manner, we are not gathering sufficient information as per that defined plan, then there is a deviation, and that deviation notified body will never entertain. Fifth, evidence of vigilance or complaint trends but no action. So as we aware that since last, for example, since last 5 years, I am receiving certain complaints and any malfunction or error related to device, and that error or complaint or malfunction I'm not assessing proper manner, and that is one type of trend I can say, that complaint coming since last 5 years, and that trend I'm not evaluating proper manner and I'm not taking any proper kappa on it particularly, then there is a chance to get the observation from notified body, because that is a sometimes that kind of trend goes in very bad manner and that provide the device failure, and in that case maybe manufacturer can lose that CE also. So these are the main 5 points related to technical file observation. Now vigilance audit, what kind of observation we are generally getting from the notified body. So vigilance procedure established by the manufacturer are in line with the applicable regulatory requirement. Any procedure, whenever you are developing any procedure, always we need to put proper regulatory requirement in the procedure. You cannot write any document randomly based on our internal thoughts and process. Always any document related to regulated market, we need to create in proper manner as per the requirement of regulatory. So vigilance procedure also we need to establish in proper manner in depth as per the line with regulatory requirement. If this kind of procedure is not as per the requirement, then there is a chance always notified body will raise the concern. Manufacturer has adequate resource to handle vigilance issues. PMS is not a small task. It's a big bucket from where you have to retrieve as much as sufficient qualitative and quantitative aspects data, and you need to justify your device is safe and performing as per the label claim and IFU. So that point of view, adequate resource to perform these all activities, to gather all this data, to consolidate in proper documentation, and to keep ready for notified body review. So this adequate resource is always, I can say, mandate part, because sometimes one person is doing lots of activity and there is a lots of confusion over that, and this document, multiple documents are massive. So try to avoid unnecessary this kind of within one short of source or something like that. Third point, procedure cover initiating corrective and preventive actions, including undertaking field safety corrective action and issuing field safety notice. So when you are developing any proper CAPA procedure, you have to include FSCA as well as FSN. Definitely, if you are creating separate procedure, that is very beneficial. But sometimes some manufacturer doing one procedure with this all kind of vigilance activity within one SOP. That is also fine. That's not an issue. But when you are developing this procedure, you have to identify all the requirements. You have to mention proper step-by-step procedure. Then you have to follow that all this procedure requirement as per the regulation requirement. So if your procedure you are not mentioning proper requirement in line with regulatory, then there is a chance to get the observation. Fourth, notified body shall verify the implementation of this procedure. So when you are developing any procedure, and if you are not following that procedure in proper manner and you are creating document out of the box and not in line with regulatory requirement, not in line with the procedure, there is a chance to get observation. And this kind of cross-linking, always notify body is checking what your procedure is saying, what you are performing in your document, what you are gathering, what you are consolidating. These all activities, notify body always cross-linking. So that stuff we need to continuously update in proper manner. So these are the major 4 points I can say observation related area during vigilance audit. As we understood now PMS, what is PMS, why it is important, what is the perspective of notified body for PMS, what are the major area from where we can gather the observation and how we can mitigate and reduce this kind of observation. Now, as per the MDR requirement, one of the major point I can say adverse event reporting. When your device related safety issue, incidents, or maybe complications, side effects, serious adverse event, there are lots of things mentioned in the MDR. So that kind of events we need to continuously monitor, we need to continuously report to the notified body, to the competent authority, and there is a proper timeline and process available in the regulation. So that my colleague and Avinash will explain you in next few slides. So over to you, Avinash.
Yeah, definitely. So like now we have understood about the various perspective and observations of notified bodies on post-market surveillance. So let's talk a bit about adverse event reporting. So before going with the adverse event reporting, let's talk about what is adverse event. So adverse event is something like which like any unexpected medical problem that arise at the time of practical use, that can be a adverse event. So basically adverse event is if we categorize adverse event, we have three categories, that is mild, moderate, or severe. If on the basis of these categories, like if mild, moderate, and severe, these are events need to report to the electronics database into the certain time frame. So the reporting of these databases are known as adverse event reporting. So if we talk about the timeline of adverse event reporting, so on the basis of their risk level and safety criteria. So if there is any severe adverse event which can be state the health of particular patient populations. So on the basis of these criteria, we have defined. So on the, if you can see on left side, there's a risk level. In the medium, there's a safety report criteria, and in the right side, timeline as per MDR to report these adverse event into the electronic database such as FT model. So if any severe adverse event is there and the public threat or any kind of serious complications can be happening to that particular event. So the timeline of that particular event is like up to within 2 days. So manufacturers have to update these data within 2 days to the particular electronic databases. If any kind of moderate issues there, which can which can be a death or any serious donations of the state of the art due to that particular adverse event, then manufacturers have a timeline of up to 10 days, with the date of awareness. So they have to upload these particular data report to database within 10 days. If there is any mild problem, which can be lead to the death or any serious alterations of the state of the hand. So in these kind of scenario, manufacturers have to upload these kind of report to the vigilance databases within 15 days. So these are the adverse event reporting timelines, which manufacturers have to follow. They have to define these particular timeline in their in their procedures as well. Like when they are identifying the particular problems, they have to mention these things in the procedures to follow, and they have to follow that completely. And that. So now, like we have understood about the why PMS is important, what is the sources of PMS, what was the prospective notified bodies. So now let's summarize today's session. So I am again inviting my colleague Grish to talk about the entire sessions and the final conclusion of that. Over to you, Grish.
Thank you. So as we understood properly in depth all the activities related to PMS, so now what is the best practice and what is the best approach to gather the PMS data in well manner as per the regulatory requirement, and what are the critical activities we need to follow or we need to perform to meet the notified body requirement expectation, and we can get very less, or I would not say like to no observation. Always there is a certain mild or moderate level observation are there, but we can try to avoid unnecessary critical observations. So what is the best practice about PMS? A robust procedure covering all requirement of EU MDR. If your base is very clear, if you are performing any activities, but that activity for performance point of view, if your documentation evidence is very clear and in depth, then there is a chance to get very less observation. But if your procedure is not explained properly, you are just writing in very basic manner, not cover all the regulatory requirement, then notify body always shout the query. That is by default I face. Second, device specific PMS plan. So device specific, we need to avoid unnecessary confusion always, because if we are confused, then notify body people will always confuse. That is the fact. Because if we are developing any document and we could not understand that document properly, then how notify body will react? So that first we need to put ourselves in place of notify body people, and we need to observe that suppose I will create all the devices related one document, and then this document I will submit to notify body, how they will react. So try to avoid bulky document and all the device in one plan and after gathering all data through that plan to consolidate all the data in one report. So avoid unnecessary creation, lots of creation of confusion and that kind of documentation. Make it simpler, precise, well-defined, and clear document. So that device-specific separate plan and device-specific PMS report or PSUR based on your device risk classification that we need to set up properly. Third, PMS activities based on both proactive and reactive sources. Always try to gather as much as sufficient real-world clinical evidence so that we can demonstrate device safety and performance as per the general safety and performance requirement, which we need to confirm through multiple data sources. As you guys are aware, maybe that's during clinical evaluation report, we need to assess multiple GSPR related to that clinical evaluation. So similar way, we need to assess all the GSPR and we need to confirm that GSPR through the multiple data sources. So PMS is one of the part of your technical documentation and we need to provide as much as sufficient clinical evidence. So both data approach, proactive and reactive sources are always helpful to gather as much as information related to your device. Fourth, device specific PMCF plan or justification for not conducting PMCF. Suppose if you are planning to conduct PMCF activities based on your device risk classification, based on your device legacy, well-established technology, whether this device intake long term to the patient body. So there's all these are the all aspects we have to consider before the planning of PMCF activities. Suppose based on these all aspects, if we are going to conduct PMCF activities, then two way. First one may be like a healthcare survey, or second one may be proper clinical study. So proper PMCF plan must be required for this kind of activities as per the MDCG 2020-7. Now, if we are not going to conduct any PMCF activities, then we need to justify that why we are not going to conduct this PMCF activity. So adequate justification must be required. We cannot say no, we are not going to conduct PMCF activities or something like that in simpler manner. We need to justify that in scientific manner as per the regulatory requirement. Fifth, extent of PMS mainly based on risk, novelty, and lifetime of device. We need to provide continuous data on interim level when notified body asking us that we need to provide on frequency basis, whatever during the audit and that setup. So that continuous manner, we need to provide continuously sufficient safety and performance data throughout the device life cycle based on device novelty, whether device is high risk, moderate risk, or low risk, or very low risk. So that things we need to continuously provide, and we need to rotate that things in a proper manner. We need to update PMS plan, we need to update PMS report or PSUR based on predefined procedure as well as plan, what frequency we are mentioning. So that is the best approach, I can say. So these are the main recommendation to gather as much as PMS data and to create your best PMS document, I can say. What are the critical activities in PMS to gather as much as sufficient evidence? Market feedback. Market feedback means you are gathering information from maybe Twitter, maybe LinkedIn, maybe from Facebook, wherever you are marketing your device on social media. So that kind of market feedback we need to continuously monitor. We need to gather all this information. We need to consolidate in our PMS report or as well as PSUR report. Second, customer feedback and complaints. Customer feedback, like who are using your device, end user or intended user. So we can ask in continuous manner, we can provide proper formulated document that can fill by that end user when they performing any surgery, intervention, or maybe any activities, and they can use and they can provide their feedback, whether this device is in proper manner, whether we need to change any design, whether we need to improvise any specification, whatever. So that based on that feedback, we can get to know that this device was in failure mode or in right direction, whatever. Vigilance. So there are lots of safety database, alert database, recall database are available for major regulated market. That's for more database, FDA recall, TPLC, then NSM, Health Canada, TGA. There are lots of data, Swissmatic. So during our technical documentation development, we need to assess all the safety database and to check whether our device related in complication, incidents, error, injury mentioned over there or not. If not, then we need to consider similar devices also. So we can understand that whether this kind of error, injury, malfunction can be possible for my device also or not. So that assessment and evaluation we need to document in proper manner in clinical evaluation report as well as in PMS data as well. FSCA, field safety corrective action. So that is also, we can gather that information from safety database as well as internal system, whatever FSCA related system in our QMS. So we can gather that information from that data source, and we need to assess that in continuous manner. Collection of new data from literature or database. Scientific bibliography, PubMed, Cochrane, Embase, these are the high level evidence data from where we can gather as much as clinical data related information related to safety and performance. And we need to assess that data in systematic manner. We cannot randomly check all the literature and we can consolidate in the PSUR, PMS report or in clinical evaluation. We need to provide proper systematic flow. We need to assess all the literature and we need to summarize those literature in proper manner. So that is also one measure and crucial part, I can say. So these are the major critical activities which we need to follow during PMS data collection.
Thank you, Avinash and Girish, for sharing such valuable insights about post-market surveillance and for helping us understand the perspective of notified body on PMS. So now it's time for some question and answers. So I would request all the participants to park their questions in Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen. Now I will start with the questions that I have. So I would like to start with Taylor. So we have a question from Taylor. Avinash, it is to you. Isn't an adverse event report technically compliant and therefore considered reactive?
Sorry, can you please come again?
Yeah. Isn't an adverse event report technically compliant and therefore considered reactive?
Yeah, I mean, like any adverse event report, which can be compliant to technical files. So any kind of report, which like any kind of adverse event, which is a problem with the device. So for that kind of report, if you need to update such kind of documentation, technical documentations or any kind of documentations which can lead to update your technical file as well. Suppose that if any kind of report you found in the litigious review, and that kind of perspective you have to update your student document. So that kind of issue you have to update your technical file as well. So yeah, definitely that can be compliant for that as well.
Thank you, Avinash. So now my next question is from Girish. How often the PMCF should be performed on class 2B devices?
So this class 2B device, it is not always mandated like we need to perform PMCF activities. First, you have to assess your device risk classification. This is always first step where you can get it that your device is class 2B. Whether this device, now next step would be you need to check whether this device is implantable, non-implantable. What are the duration of intake with patient body, whether it's transition, whether it's short-term duration or whether it's long-term. So that also you need to cover up that assessment. After that, you have to check whether this device is novel or maybe like well-established technology or maybe long history about your device, because you are obtain C certification under MDD scope more than 10 years or 15 years. So you definitely you have sufficient PMS data. So in that case, you can try to avoid unnecessary efforts related to PMCF. You can consider that PMCF activity through healthcare survey also. That is not always case to conduct proper clinical study, because always there is a huge effort over there. So that kind of all the aspects you need to cover up before defining the PMCF activities. And then after still you not gather that much information and still you are in confusion more, maybe then you can also ask to notify body sometimes, because MDR is clearly saying we need to consult with notify bodies always if there is any question or doubts over there. But in that case, if your device is class 2B non-implantable, and if you have long history about your device, well-established technology, sufficient PMS data available, sufficient non-clinical data which you are performing during your before the market launch, like preclinical benchtop testing, biocompatibility. So these all data source can justify your device is safe and performing in well manner as per the regulatory requirement. So that is not always to go with PMCF activities. So that all things you have to assess before execution or before developing any PMCF plan or PMCF activities.
Okay, thank you, Girish. Now, my next question is from Avinash. What is the best way to address a PMCF plan if the device is not yet commercialized?
Yeah, so like if a device is not commercialized, so basically like if this is new device and then we have to create a PMCF plan. So we have to mention that like this device, we have to identify the risk of the devices. If you know this is a class 3 device, then you have to mark like you will do the survey and you will do the PMCF study in certain time frame. So you have to mention the particular justification and first of all planning in the PMCF plan to avoid some kind of question. So like also you have to, if it's a class 1 devices, then you maybe like there are just chances of less risk, then you can just increase the time frame to 2 to 3 years. So we can define like the time frame, like after 3 years we are planning to do the customer survey, and at the time of distributing the product we can take the user feedback. So these kind of activities we can plan in our PMCF planning documentations to avoid some kind of questions from the notified body, because this is a new devices and there might be some chances of risk. So that kind of data we can gather and we can show that at the our not like technical file audits, so we can weigh off the certain questions from the notified bodies.
Thank you, Avinash. Now, my next question is for Girish. AER, adverse event report, severe versus moderate. That would be considered, death would be considered moderate. Why? In adverse event reporting, whether it's severe or moderate, that would be considered moderate. This is the question from Ray.
So you mean death?
That death, sorry,
Yeah.
miss of tongue.
So moderate, why they mention moderate? Because first thing, definitely based on their impact assessment and that incidence assessment, maybe they found that that is not related to that device, because there is chance. Suppose, let me tell you through one example. Suppose there is a hip implant or knee implants. Once that implant to the patient body, so generally this kind of device goes in patient body that's above the 40 years old or maybe old age people. So in that case, there is a chance that patient can die due to their age or maybe other complication or things. So that kind of assessment, maybe they perform initial level and then accordingly they found that there is that is not related to that device, and that is not impact on patient due to this device. So that point of view, maybe they consider as a moderate level. But ultimately, I can say death is a severe condition, but not in always case. Based on your device and based on your adverse event assessment, we need to consider whether this death is applicable to this device or not, and accordingly we need to categorize whether this death is moderate or maybe severe or something like that.
Thank you, Girish. Next question is for Girish only. Will the EU MDR notified bodies accept a vigilance procedure that has captured local regulation too?
Yes, definitely. You can consolidate your local regulation as well as your EUMDS perspective also. You don't need to create, because see, when we are setting up any QMS activity, we don't need to create each regulation wise QMS. We need to consider all the aspect when we are going for global market. And in that manner, you need to define all these QMS related activities or maybe different regulation related requirement according to their process point of view. You need to define in proper manner. As I provide you that explanation, when you are developing any procedure, any base, you need to define in well manner, in depth. You don't need to write up just in simply manner. If you provide in clear manner properly, these activities related to this regulation, this activity related to this. I know there is sometimes maybe procedure goes in a long manner or long documentation, but if you are planning to go in huge global market, in that manner, you need to check all the regulatory requirement. You need to make certain gap assessment and analysis, like what are the certain same requirement, what are the certain different requirement from each country to country. So accordingly, you can consolidate your document in that manner, and then that procedure can comply for, I can say, measure globally. For example, MDSAP now is applicable for, I think, US, Brazil, Japan, Canada, and Australia. So there are measure, all these country can accept one single procedure for all this region, because that is a single audit program. So why they are accepting this kind of, because their FTA has their own documentation process, their regulatory requirement. Australia is their different regulatory. So that kind of documentation, when we are creating, we need to precisely define in depth and proper manner, so that we can avoid unnecessary question from regulatory and notified bodies.
Thank you, Girish. Now the next question is from Avinash. The EU MDR is indicating various tools and methods for collecting and analyzing the PMS data sources. Could you please name some?
Yeah, like there are various databases. So like I have already discussed throughout the presentations, like we can do like post-market clinical follow-up study, we can do a PMCF survey, we can collect the data from various sources like vigilance searches. We can do we can identify the data from the teachers review. So there are various sources where we can gather the data from various aspects of the medical device. So like when you have to like not all the database sources we have to identify, but we have to just figure out the database as per the classification of the product. If the classification is a high risk or like class 3 device, then you have to identify more and more databases. You have to take the user feedback, so that type more scrutiny will help you to make a robust PMCA plan, robust PMCA report as well. You have a better PSPR report for class 3 devices. So like that kind of like process just help us to implement a wide range of documentations, and you have a like inadequate PMCA plan, this kind of things.
Okay, thank you, Avinash. So my last question is from Girish. So Girish, this question is, there can be a justification to not perform PMCF. What all should be included in that as a MDR, as per MDR? So this is from Suchit Shah.
So yes, okay. Thanks, Sujit, for this question. So as per MDR requirement, when you are not going to perform PMCF activity and when you need to provide justification, first you need to check your device risk classification. Second thing, you need to check your device interaction, whether its device is short-term use, transition use, or long-term use. Apart from, you need to check whether your device is legacy device, well-established technology, or long history. Apart from, what kind of data source, suppose your device is legacy and that device during that device C certification in MDT era, what kind of data source you have utilized to obtain that C certification. Those data are sufficient, whether you have sufficient PMS data, whether you have sufficient non-clinical data. So these are the all aspects you have to consider and you need to put in proper manner. These are the points, and based on this point, I can say that my device is well established legacy device. There is a sufficient clinical evidence available through PMS data, through non-clinical benchtop biocompatibility. Apart from this device is very short term or maybe transition use. Apart from that, the device risk classification. So everything, if you provide in proper manner, then your justification will goes in adequate manner, and then notified body will accept that kind of justification.
Thank you, Girish and Avinash, for answering the questions. Dear participants, due to lack of time and the volume of questions that we have, we are unable to answer all the questions in this session. However, please rest assured, we will share the answers to your queries over the email ID through which you have registered for the webinar. So now it's time for polls. So before we leave for the webinar, uh, I would request you all to kindly drop your answers to this quick poll that you will see on your screen now. Thank you everyone for your answers to the poll. And I would also like to thank you for being with us today. It is indeed a pleasure seeing you all actively participating in this important agenda. You will receive the recorded version of this webinar along with the certificate of participation within next 24 hours on your emails. We will share answers to your queries within 1 to 2 working days to your email ID through which you have registered. You can also see our other webinars on our website www.saracasolutions.com. Thank you everyone. It is pleasure being with you all today. Have a great day ahead.